Hey everybody, this is Albert, and in this video I'm going to be speaking on the allegations that you hear now and then about Jesus going to India. The whole thing's pretty much ridiculous, but this is, on the internet, every hoax gets a new lease on life, so I thought I'd address some of that since I've never spoken about that before. Now I'm going to be referring to certain alleged gospels that claim Jesus went to India. Now, I want to make clear these have nothing to do with gospels you may have heard of, like the Gnostic Gospels or other non-canonical gospels from antiquity. These gospels have all very positively been established as modern forgeries, even though some people really just don't want to admit it. And sometimes you'll see these lists of gospels that were suppressed or some such thing, and they'll include all the non-canonical gospels, but they'll also include these gospels that were basically just obviously modern. So I just want to go into them. Now, there are some common themes that run through these modern forgeries. They tend towards a very romanticized vision of the East that was very popular. This vision, this romanticized vision, was very popular in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. They display ideas that mark them as modern rather than ancient, and they're full of all sorts of anachronisms. No manuscripts are ever available to examine. Some are not even based upon real manuscripts, but supposed visions from the world beyond. Now, when you see them on the internet, they always leave that part out. I'll let the reader decide in this latter case whether this is a case of the person being insane or a charlatan. There's also, of course, your more run-of-the-mill frauds. They're not all crazy. Some of them are just doing it for the attention or the money. Now, first one I'll mention is there was a fellow named Levi H. Dowling, who was a former preacher turned follower of esoteric wisdom, who claimed he received the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ through visions from a higher plane of existence. Needless to say, we shouldn't expect much in the way of manuscript evidence, but it doesn't get much better when one looks at the actual text. The whole thing is a mishmash of Christian and esoteric texts with theosophical terminology mixing with excerpts from not only the canonical Gospels, but the Proto-Evangelium of James. Some memorable faux pas in the text have Jesus meeting the sage, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name here, Meng Se. It's M-E-N-G, and then it's either T-S-E, T-S-Z-E, or T-Z-E, depending on how they transliterate. He meets him in Tibet. Problem is that particular sage died in 289 BC. He also visits the city of Persepolis, which Alexander the Great, that's in Persia. Alexander the Great destroyed that city in 330 BC. Not unexpectedly, the text betrays Dowling's familiarity with past esoteric works. It's really kind of hard to believe anyone takes this gospel seriously, but as I said, the internet gives every crackpot a new lease on life. Next, we have Nicholas Notovich, who was a Russian war correspondent, and he claimed he injured his leg in Tibet and was brought to a Buddhist monastery. There, he allegedly was read the Life of the Holy Issa. The book was a sensation. His book was a sensation when it came out, and attempts were made to verify these claims. At that point, the whole thing unraveled. Max Mueller, who was a leading expert in the East at that time, contacted the monastery and was told the whole thing was made up. They never heard of this guy. No one ever broke his leg there. And various other things kept coming out, which is just, this could not have happened. Notovich at that point has kept changing his story, it wasn't one text, it was a whole lot of texts he kind of pieced together. No, I didn't exactly break my leg. At that point, the whole thing, everyone realized it was a hoax, and Notovich was henceforth ignored. By the way, there was no ulterior motive other than either attention or money with him. It was just your run-of-the-mill fraud at that point. There was no theological or whatever angle to it. He just was doing it to get some attention, and it worked. What's funny, though, is that the story should have ended there, but it didn't. You see, because then 30 or 40 years later, someone reprinted it, and it started all over again until someone pointed out, wait a minute, we've dealt with this before. And it recurs every few decades. It got printed again in the 60s. And now, of course, it's the internet. So, of course, it's going to get, but they ignore the previous story behind it and just print the text. And, so it just happens again. When you actually read the text, the internal evidence doesn't fare much better. The text, first of all, whoever wrote it obviously knew large portions of the New Testament, because it's a lot of it is just taken from the New Testament documents. Jesus also defends in this text, he defends human rights and extols nature's laws. Now, it's not the idea that Jesus would be against human rights or not like nature's laws, but those particular phrases are modern phrases. They're catchphrases of basically of the Enlightenment, and make no sense for someone to be speaking that way in the early centuries or in late antiquity. It just makes absolutely no sense. So it's just completely out of place in an allegedly ancient document. Now, as with Notovich, the Gospel of the Holy 12, promoted by Gideon Jasper Ousley, was supposedly located in the Tibetan monastery. But Ousley, a minister who decided Christianity was actually about vegetarianism and esoteric wisdom, was far different from Notovich in his alleged manner of verification. He stated he never saw the manuscript. He never visited the monastery and didn't know anybody there. He just happened to have a copy of this gospel. While such candor is admirable, it raises the question why anyone should believe it is authentic. Ousley's answer was he had received it from very reliable sources, including, among others, Emanuel Swedenborg. All the sources he named were dead. Swedenborg for well over a century. In fact, Swedenborg died before Ousley was born. So some explanation was needed. Simple. Ousley said they had communicated the information to him from the world beyond. Do I really need to go any further with this? As for the text itself, again, there's all sorts of anachronisms in it. There's references to someone breeding hunting dogs, which apparently this person was a 19th century Englishman who somehow got lost in the ancient Near East. And then there's church bells being, and there's all sorts of things that just absolutely make no sense in an ancient document. By the way, some editions of the text, and certainly the online versions who are backing this text, always leave out the story of how Ousley received it, and give the impression it was from an actual manuscript. There was no manuscript. Now, while the whole affair is ridiculous, this actually applies even more to those who cite the text as evidence in any dispute apart from that of Ousley's sanity. Just when you thought it couldn't get any more ridiculous, along comes Edmond Bordeaux-Zekely. I may be pronouncing this wrong, S-Z-E-K-E-L-Y, and his Essene Gospel of Peace. Zekely claims he found copies of this text both in the Vatican archives and the Royal Archives of the Habsburgs. Both institutions deny there ever had any such document. In fact, the Vatican archives keep very good lists of who's been there and who hasn't been there. You have to sign in, and he's never been there. Zekely's response to this was that it was obviously all the knowledge of this document is being suppressed by a Vatican conspiracy. Now, no one has ever seen the manuscripts, these alleged manuscripts, apart from Zekely claiming he had seen them. And as the years went on, his accounts changed. He kept changing exactly how he, came across them, or exactly where he came across them, and it's obviously a hoax by the external evidence. But it gets even worse when you look at the text. Jesus is presented as an advocate of various health practices that were fashionable in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. There was a sort of health, just like every era has its health gurus, but what counts as being healthy changes over time. And in the late 19th and early 20th century, one of the big things that was popular for a healthy body was the regular use of enemas. And in this gospel, in fact, baptism is equated with enemas. It's kind of hard to take seriously a text that has Jesus talking about hanging a gourd full of water on a tree and having a stalk coming out and pouring the water into your hinder parts, and then in the climatic moment, Jesus says, "Then let the water run out from your body that it may carry away from within it all the unclean and evil-smelling things of Satan." Apparently, the occasional irregularity spoken of in many laxative ads is not only discomforting, but a sure sign of demonic possession. It's sort of absurd that anyone is still trying to promote these documents, and I just pointed them out because you'll see them in these lists of other gospels when they really don't belong there. And if anyone comes across them, I just thought they might be interested in knowing the real story behind them. Thank you very much for your time.